This is Sibongile Tiambo with the news, the headlines this hour. The government requirement for national ID for Malawians to receive COVID-19 vaccine. Education Ministry says 2021 MSc examinations have started on a positive note. 10% of children treated for hydrocephalus and spina bifida dying in hospitals due to late detection. And in sports, Malawi national women's football team, the Scorchers, out of the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. Thank you for joining me. I am Sibongile Ziambo. And we begin with news that the Ministry of Health has removed the mandatory requirement for Malawians to present a national identity card in order to receive COVID-19 vaccine. Co-chairperson for the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Wilfred Chalamila Nkoma, told Zodiac on Monday the decision is part of efforts to address challenges slowing mass uptake of vaccines in the country. The Center for Human Rights and Rehabilitation, which made the proposal, says despite compliance in urban, in town centers, there are still reports of healthcare workers still asking people to produce IDs in rural areas. This report by Blessings Kangombe.
In August this year, the Center for Human Rights and Rehabilitation, CHRR, requested the Minister of Health to remove mandatory national ID requirement when people are accessing COVID-19 vaccines. The human rights body argues with data showing over 3 million Malawians do not have national IDs. Many are being denied access to the jabs, saying this is sad for a country that is already struggling to get more people jabbed. Now, CHRR Executive Director Michael Kayatsa told us the Minister of Health has to follow the request.
In the rural areas, there are still some reports that, some people have been asked to produce the national ID. It looks like the message from the minister has not really trickled down to rural areas. So we are asking the ministry to do more to ensure that every healthcare worker who is administering the vaccine understands the current policy.
Meanwhile, chairperson for the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Wilfred Chalamila Nkoma, says removing bottlenecks challenging vaccines uptake is key to encouraging a lot of people to get jabbed.
The ID is very important to identify the person, to identify the record within the national database. But as the Minister of Health has indicated, it will be important to remove all bottlenecks. Therefore, even those giving the services in the rural areas should abide by this immediate requirement.
Malawi intends to vaccinate 11 million people by December 2022. However, statistics from the Ministry of Health currently shows that 540,186 people have been fully vaccinated.
Minister of Education says the 2021 Malawi School Certificate of Education examinations have started on a positive note across the country. Minister responsible Agnes Nyalonje said after an inspection in some examination centers in data that there hasn't been reports of serious incidences impacting on administration of the exams on the first day. About 129,000 candidates are expected to sit this year's MSc examinations running from October 26 to 18 November. Vice President Dr. Salos Chilima says government is steadfastly working on a recovery plan from COVID-19 pandemic to achieve the country's 2063 agenda. Dr. Chilima was speaking in Lilongwe during the launch of the World Bank's Country Private Sector Diagnostic Report, which recognizes the private sector's potential for Malawi's economic transformation drive. World Bank Country Manager Hugh Riedel has indicated that although Malawi is passing through challenging times, there is need to be optimistic that economic transformation is achievable through prudent financial management. This report by Weston Guta.
Despite that the World Bank is forecasting an economic rebound of 2.8% in the country's GDP this year, this falls below what it takes to lift household incomes and provide a brighter future. This is the reason Vice President Salos Chilima indicated efforts by government are being carried out to promote economic recovery following the ravaging COVID-19 pandemic. Chilima emphasized that opportunities that can move the country forward should be prioritized, this including partnerships with private companies in some sectors as transport, energy and infrastructure to create wealth and reduce poverty. He further said the country should take advantage of the continental free trade area to expand our capacity to grow economically to realize the 2063 agenda. World Bank Country Manager Hugh Riedel has since said the country should be crowding in the private sector as a key agent of transformational investments, which positions government as an enabler of the realization of the Agenda 2063. Riedel added that some projects, including the Shire Valley transformation, are game changers which need partnership with the private sector, of which the bank is ready to commit more support. Reporting for Zodiac, this is Western Guta.
Owners of Crossroads Hotels in Blantyre and Lilongwe ZST Investment have secured land on Mount Pleasant Avenue from Blantyre City Council to construct a 5-star hotel. ZST Investment Chairman Harun Sekran says the investment will include construction of a 1,000 capacity international conference center among some of the structures. Sekran says this investment is worth $25 million United States dollars.
So this will be our third major Crossroads hotel and shopping complex investment in Blantyre again. And as you can see from the photos and all that, it's a very, very big project, and we are hoping to invest at least $25 million. This structure is going to have a 5-star hotel, 96 bedrooms, and it's going to be an international conference center as well. You know, when the construction is on, there will be almost, I would say, between 500 to 700 people that will be busy on the site. And once the project is ready, you can imagine the number of vacancies and, will create the jobs that will be created between the hotel, the food courts and other shops. And apart from job creation, the biggest thing that is going to happen is we're going to support the rural farmers by strengthening our ties with them in terms of the supply chain, where they'll be supplying all the vegetables and foods, which they're already doing with our other hotels and food courts.
Minister of Tourism Dr. Michael Usi, who led the groundbreaking ceremony on Tuesday, says this is expected to transform the outlook and tourism standards of the country while creating jobs for Malawians.
This is very good for the economy of Malawi because we are looking at job creation, we are looking at urbanization of the city, and also the service provision is going to be competitive because it's adding another facility, tourism facility. So we are looking at X plus. Now, the more we have service providers, the more competition, and naturally quality should be improved. So it is a welcome development. Nevertheless, the quality of the human capital at the highest level in the hotel management facility is very, very critical for the development of tourism in Malawi. I also did mention that when we are talking about tourism vis-a-vis the hotel industry, we should not just be looking at hotel industries competing within Malawi. They should see that we are in a global market, so there's global competition. So they should appraise themselves in the sight of other emerging qualities from other countries.
The National Planning Commission, NPC, has introduced a one-stop window where all policies from ministries, departments and agencies will easily be accessed for the smooth implementation of the country's development blueprint, Malawi 2063. The Commission's Director of Knowledge and Learning, Dr. Joseph Nganakoli, said the Policy Digest is a catalogue of various national policies, strategies and plans of the government to ensure ease of access by various stakeholders, local or international. He said policies, strategies and plans are key in implementing Malawi 2063 and ensure alignment and focus within the sectors.
To do here is that I think for us to effectively and efficiently implement the Malawi vision, we need policies that I think are talking to the issues, the enablers, the pillars to implement them. So in a more brief way is that we are trying to basically bring on board all the policies that we have in Malawi and actually align them to the pillars and the enablers and provide an easy access where colleagues, where partners, where stakeholders can easily access them for reference. Because we need to refer to these policies as we implement the policy. As we implement the Malawi 2063. So basically what we have done here is to create a one-stop window where colleagues, yourselves, anybody else can just click on and download a policy, refer to it as we implement the Malawi.
An environmental organization, the Lilongwe Drive Trust, says popularization of the Wildlife Act is key if communities around protected areas are to be prevented from committing wildlife crimes. LOTW Environmental Education Manager Clement Manjalira says ignorance on existing laws is one factor fueling wildlife crimes among communities around Kasungu National Park. The organization has embarked on sensitizing people of TH Chulu in Kasungu on the Wildlife Act and benefits of conserving the environment. Noam Kubwe reports.
Lilongwe Wildlife Trust Environmental Education Manager Clement Manjalira says people living along protected areas are a key stakeholder in conserving wildlife reserves. He, however, says sometimes they come into conflict with the law because they're not aware of penalties on offenses they perceive as minor.
It is very important for people to understand what is happening, what the law is saying, because if people don't know anything, then they end up committing crimes, which is not good. So it is our role to sensitize the people, to take a role to understand why is it that they should take part in conserving wildlife. In so doing, they can avoid committing wildlife crimes.
Manjalira was speaking when the Lilongwe Wildlife Trust and the Department of Parks and Wildlife held a joint awareness meeting to sensitize people living along the Kasungu National Park in the area of Chifichulu on amendments in the Wildlife Act. Speaking at the function, Matenje Ward Councillor Decent Chibangula said awareness of existing wildlife laws would help the community to take part in reporting perpetrators of wildlife crimes around the Kasungu National Park. Kasungu National Park Division Manager Timothy Maseko Chana held Lilongwe Wildlife Trust for the campaign, saying to go a long way to protecting wildlife in the park. For Zodiac, this is Noam Kubwe, Kasungu.
You're watching news on Zodiac. We'll be right back shortly. Stand by.
Build big, build quality. If you're thinking of having building material lowest prices,
mipando ya sofa, dining set, mabedi, coffee table zisamakhale ngati zolandira kuli kufanana ayi. Ku Davina Furnishers amapanga mipando, masofa set, dining set mmene inuyo eni yake mukufunira, podziwa kuti anthufe timakhala nkukonda kosiyanasiyana. Awuzeni a Davina Furnishers akupangireni zinthu zolongosoka, anthu ena asirire. Davina Furnishers ili pafupi ndi Gateway Mall, kungoloka msewu wochokera ku Mchinji roundabout ku Lilongwe. Ino amaloji, mahotel ndi onse okonda zinthu zabwino, chitani telefoni ku nambala iyi: Davina Furnishers 0999 002 707.
Sompina amalawi watukula malawi 2063 kufika 2063 akale wokomera aliyense achinyamata tigwirane manja tukula malawi achinyamata tikale patsogolo tukula malawi malawi wozimira paeka malawi wokomera aliyense Malawi 2063 kusintha dziko lathu mokomera aliyense.
Welcome back. A look at the headlines as we proceed with the news. Government removes mandatory requirement for national ID for Malawians to receive COVID-19 vaccine. Education Ministry says 2021 MSc examinations have started on a positive note. 10% of children treated for hydrocephalus and spina bifida dying in hospitals due to late detection. In sports, Malawi national women's football team the Scorchers out of the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. This is Sibongile Ziambo. Thank you for joining me. In moving on with the news, about 50 children out of every 500 treated for hydrocephalus and spina bifida in the country's 4 major referral hospitals die owing to late diagnosis, while the rest suffer brain damage, causing a social and economic cost burden. Head of surgery at Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital in Blantyre, Professor Dongosolo Kamalo, says hydrocephalus, a disease associated with head swelling in under 5 children, is treatable if detected early. Alex Banda reports.
The head of neurosurgery at Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital in Blantyre, Professor Dongosolo Kamalo, says hydrocephalus and spina bifida, a condition of swelling of the head and the back in under 5 children, is prevalent in the country. Professor Kamalo, however, says the challenge is late detection and treatment, which results to 10% of those treated dying, while the rest suffer from brain damage.
In our case, we are not doing that, so usually we wait for the family to notice that the head is getting bigger. Usually by the time they get consent, it's too big. Even if they come for help, even if we operate on them, the outcome is not as good as it would have been had we operated on them early enough. So it is something that we need to seriously consider. It's a genuine concern. It is something that our government should take into consideration.
On the commemoration of the International Day of Spina Bifida and Hydrocephalus, which falls on every 25 October, Blessings Chabodega, an executive director of Child Help, has asked government to consider introducing charts which will show head measurements of under 5 children.
People can check, but research is showing that government spend millions and millions of money in taking care of persons with hydrocephalus, especially when they have been detected late. So if they can be political will, if the government can be interested to incorporate this chart into the under 5 health passport book, they can achieve this area identification and they can save a lot of money that can go to some other developmental activities of the nation.
Minister of Health was yet to comment on the 50 children out of every 500 treated for hydrocephalus in the country's 4 major referral hospitals die owing to late detection of the disease, while the rest suffer from brain damage and a cost burden on the social and economic status of the families. For Zodiac in Blantyre, this is Alex Banda.
Government says Malawi needs to undertake some serious consultative processes and reposition itself in the tobacco industry to maximize benefits. Minister of Agriculture Lobin Lowe said this in Lilongwe after a tour of JTI Tobacco Processing Factory, which is processing the local leaf as well as expected to process more from neighboring countries. JTI Managing Director John Gauna says there is still a promising future for the industry in Malawi, hence investing $100 million in the past 10 years to process leaf from other countries, which will maximize profits. This report by Western Kuta.
Minister of Agriculture Lobin Lowe says serious consultative processes should be undertaken in reviewing the Tobacco Act to make the industry more favorable. Lowe says the country should, among other things, enhance capacity to take care of its leaf from the farms and grading so that it fetches equally as it does elsewhere.
It's pleasing to note that they still consider Malawi as the main processing country, because all along, you may agree with me, according to you, media people, the press, there's negative publicity against tobacco. It is as if Malawi is abandoning tobacco and going for other crops. But witnessing the investment that is here, this alone talks volumes of the future of our tobacco.
JTI Managing Director John Gauna says the country boasts of a capacity to process 240 million kilograms of tobacco annually, of which even JTI is only managing up to 40 million kilograms out of its 50 million kilograms capacity. Gauna has lamented levies imposed by the Tobacco Commission and the Malawi Bureau of Standards as having made processing facilities less appealing.
The issue around the Tobacco Act review, the Honourable Minister raised that and says it's in process. Another one is about building complementary crops to improve grower welfare. I think this is an important element, currently deemed as diversification.
According to the JTI, tobacco processing factories in neighboring countries have closed down, creating an opportunity for Malawi to tap into a competitive alternative. For Zodiac, this is Western Buta.
We move to sports news. Malawi national women's football team, the Scorchers, have been booted out of the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers following a 3-2 loss to Zambia's Copa Queens in Zambia. Malawi needed to win, but the loss means the Copa Queens are through to the next round of the qualifiers with a 4-3 aggregate, thereby dumping the Scorchers out. Bright Kanyama followed the match and filed this report.
Dreams of Malawi national football team, the Scorchers, of making their first ever appearance at the Continental Showbiz have been shattered by Zambia's Copa Queens. The Scorchers gave away 2 cheap goals, one in each half. However, it was Malawi who scored first through Asmenyi Smwaka after just 9 minutes in the first half. 2 goals from Rachel Kudananji put the host in the lead, but Wes Mvula restored parity in the second half. However, Rushomo Mwenda scored the winner for Zambia. Co-caretaker coach for the Scorchers, Magnebet Kazua, said his charges tried their level best to beat Zambia, but giving away cheap goals is what costed them. The result means Zambia is now through to the next stage of the qualifiers with a 4-3 aggregate following a 1-0 draw at BNS last week. They will next face Namibia. For Zodiac, this is Bright Kanyama.
That's about what we had time for in this edition of news. And before we go, a look at the headlines. Government removes the mandatory requirement for national ID for Malawians to receive COVID-19 vaccine. Education Ministry says 2021 MSc examinations have started on a positive note. 10% of children treated for hydrocephalus and spina bifida dying in hospitals due to late detection. In sports, Malawi national women's football team, the Scorchers, out of the 2022 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. This has been Sibongile Zambo. Thank you for watching and goodbye.